Welcome, thrill seekers of low rent and questionable weather. Today, we're diving into America's cheapest cities to live in 2026, where your dollar stretches, your neighbors are interesting, and the sun is optional. Buckle up because these places aren't just affordable, they're unforgettable, for better or worse. Pittsburgh, the city of bridges, steel, and inexplicably affordable rent. If you've ever dreamed of living somewhere that smells faintly of nostalgia and exhaust, this is your paradise. Welcome to a place where your dollar goes further than your hopes and dreams, mostly because no one is moving here fast enough to drive prices up. Let's start with the basics. Pittsburgh's cost of living is shockingly low for a city of its size. Housing? You can snag a decent apartment downtown for less than the price of a studio in some trendy cities that shall remain nameless. Looking at you, San Francisco. Sure, you might be paying a little extra in heating during the winter, but hey, the snow gives you character, right? And if you like walking across bridges in the middle of a foggy morning, Pittsburgh practically invented your aesthetic. Now let's talk neighborhoods. Oh, the neighborhoods. On one hand, you've got areas like Shadyside and Squirrel Hill, where hipsters sip artisanal coffee and dogs outnumber humans. On the other hand, you've got, well, let's just say neighborhoods where you'll know every neighbor by their first and last names because you'll see them through your window while they do whatever it is they do. It's affordable living with a hint of danger. Keeps life spicy. Employment? Pittsburgh was once the steel capital of the world. Now it's trying really hard to rebrand itself with tech, healthcare, and robotics. So if you're into coding robots to sort through leftover steel, or making apps that tell people where to buy pierogies, congratulations, you're in luck. Just don't expect the same job opportunities as, say, New York or San Francisco, but your rent check will thank you. And the charm of Pittsburgh isn't just in the money you save. Oh no, it's in the bridges. Seriously, Pittsburgh has more bridges than any city on Earth, 446 to be exact. That's a bridge for every mood. A bridge to cross when you're happy, a bridge to cross when you're sad, a bridge to cross when you've had too much coffee, which, let's be honest, is every Pittsburgh morning. And yes, it rains a lot. Fog, drizzle, mist. It's basically nature's way of reminding you that life is hard, but at least your rent is cheap. Let's not forget sports. Pittsburghers are fiercely loyal to their teams, the Steelers, the Penguins, and the Pirates. You may not be able to afford front row seats, but cheering from your couch with a cheap six-pack and a local sandwich is just as authentic. And honestly, after a few winters here, you'll probably start rooting for the Steelers just to have something to complain about when the next snowfall hits. Food? Surprisingly decent. Pittsburgh has a weird obsession with pierogies, Primanti Brothers sandwiches, yes, with fries inside the sandwich, and anything that can survive a long gray winter. It's comfort food with an identity crisis, and it works because after shoveling snow for an hour, you deserve it. Now, here's the catch, because there's always a catch. Pittsburgh isn't for everyone. Winters are long and gray, public transportation is, well, it exists, technically, and if you're looking for glitz or glamour, this isn't your city. But if you're looking for affordable living, quirky neighborhoods, and a city that's as stubbornly charming as it is gloomy, Pittsburgh will wrap you up in a steel and river hug and whisper, "We're cheap, but we try." So there you have it, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Affordable, weirdly lovable, full of bridges, and ready to welcome anyone who's willing to brave the fog and embrace the quirks. Come for the low rent, stay for the pierogies, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find yourself calling this steel city home. Or at least somewhere you can afford to live while plotting your next move. Cleveland, the city that constantly asks, "Are we famous yet?" Spoiler alert, sometimes yes, sometimes no, but the rent is always low. Welcome to a city of contradictions. Industrial grit meets cultural ambition, passionate sports fans meet bitter winters, and affordable living meets, well, questionable aesthetics. Let's start with the numbers, because statistics are the only way to pretend you know what you're doing. Cleveland's cost of living is remarkably low for a mid-sized city in America. Housing is cheap enough that you could rent a decent apartment downtown, grab a few Clevelander coffee shops, and still have money left over to buy lakefront ice cream, if you're feeling optimistic about Lake Erie's water quality. But don't get too comfortable. Some neighborhoods are thriving hubs of innovation, while others are, let's say, creatively abandoned. It's like a citywide treasure hunt. For every charming street, there's a block where the pigeons have unionized. Neighborhoods? Oh boy. There's Ohio City, trendy, packed with breweries, artisanal anything, and people who think kale smoothies are a personality trait. Then there's Tremont, a cultural hub where galleries, coffee shops, and inexplicably expensive apartments coexist with historic charm. And of course, you have the parts of Cleveland where you'll look around and think, am I in a post-industrial dystopian novel? Don't worry, you are, but somehow that adds character. Employment in Cleveland is interesting. The city has its fingers in healthcare, manufacturing, and a smattering of tech. The Cleveland Clinic is world-renowned, so if you're into saving lives, or at least working somewhere people pay attention to, you've got options. But don't expect booming Silicon Valley-type salaries. The upside is your low rent cushions the blow. And if you want to start a side hustle selling pierogies or vintage vinyl records, go ahead. Cleveland will quietly support you, probably while sipping a local craft beer. Now let's talk charm. Cleveland has history, surprisingly rich history, from rock and roll to cultural landmarks. Yes, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is here, finally a place where your music nerd obsession is socially acceptable. And the food scene? Diverse, affordable, and surprisingly adventurous. Polish boys, pierogies, corned beef, local breweries, your taste buds will thank you, even if your neighbors aren't particularly chatty. Sports? Oh, sports. Cleveland fans are intense. They love their Browns, Cavaliers, and Indians, now Guardians. If you thought you could survive in Cleveland without catching a little heartbreak, think again. But hey, cheap rent and passionate fans make for excellent storytelling when your team inevitably loses in the playoffs. It's tradition. The catch? Winters. Brutal, icy, and often gray. The lake effect snow is real, and yes, it will make you question every life choice leading up to your move here. Public transport is limited, traffic can be awkward, and let's be honest, some parts of Cleveland are visually challenging. But that's what makes living here an adventure. It's real, it's gritty, it's, well, Cleveland. So, Cleveland, Ohio, low-cost living, rich culture, passionate fans, and a city that refuses to take itself too seriously. Come for the affordable apartments, stay for the pierogies, and maybe, just maybe, you'll fall in love with a city that proudly embraces its flaws, celebrates its victories, and keeps you guessing at every turn. Cleveland isn't perfect, but then again, cheap rent rarely is. Detroit, the Motor City. Once the unstoppable engine of American industry, now a place where your rent is cheap and your expectations should be flexible. If you like urban decay with a side of resilience, you've hit the jackpot. Detroit is a city that's equal parts tragedy, triumph, and questionable architectural decisions. Let's talk numbers first, because statistics are fun when you can mock them. Detroit has one of the lowest costs of living of any major U.S. city. Your apartment rent? You can practically pay for a whole year and still have money left for gas, or, a solid supply of Coney dogs. But before you get too excited, keep in mind that the city has experienced significant population decline over the past few decades. So yes, your neighbor might be a friendly retiree or a stray cat who's claimed the basement as its kingdom. Now, neighborhoods. Detroit is a patchwork quilt of contrasts. Downtown is like a trendy revival sitcom. Glass buildings, coffee shops, and murals that make you feel cultured for about 3 minutes before you realize the rest of the city hasn't caught up yet. Then there's Midtown, home to the artsy crowd and a few museums where everyone owns at least one ironic t-shirt and an even more ironic bicycle. And don't forget the areas where abandoned houses outnumber people. And yet, somehow, the spirit of the city persists. It's gritty, it's raw, and it gives you stories your friends in suburbia could never understand. Employment? Well, Detroit's identity is tied to cars, and more cars. The big three automakers still have a presence here, and there's been some growth in tech and small business startups. But if you're hoping for a booming job market like Silicon Valley, let's just say Detroit has charm, not miracles. Still, your paycheck might stretch further than most cities, which is nice if your hobbies include dodging potholes and exploring abandoned factories. Speaking of charm, Detroit has history dripping from every corner. Motown, invented here. Music legends, born here. Sports teams, passionate fans, heartbreak guaranteed. And street art, oh, the street art. You can't walk a block without seeing a mural that makes you pause, take a selfie, and think, wow, someone painted hope on this wall over an abandoned building. It's simultaneously inspiring and mildly depressing. Perfect Detroit vibes. And let's talk food, because Detroit doesn't disappoint. Coney dogs, Detroit-style pizza, and a surprising array of international cuisine thanks to a city that's diverse, resilient, and refuses to die quietly. Just don't expect Michelin star prices. Here, affordability is king, and comfort food reigns supreme. But here's the reality check. Detroit isn't a picture-perfect city. Winters are harsh, public transport is functional at best, and some parts of the city feel like you've stepped into a post-apocalyptic movie set. But that's what makes it unique. It's a city that survived bankruptcy, population decline, and the collapse of its core industry, and yet, somehow, it's still standing. There's grit here, courage here, and a very particular kind of stubborn charm that says we may be rough around the edges, but we're still worth your attention. So, Detroit. Affordable? Absolutely. Beautiful? In its own rough, raw way. Dangerous? Occasionally. But if you can handle the contradictions, the Motor City has a character that few cities can match. Come for the low rent, stay for the stories, and maybe, just maybe, you'll start to love the place, even if it occasionally reminds you that life is unpredictable, messy, and sometimes covered in rust. Ah, Buffalo, New York, the city that brags about wings, snow, and somehow being in New York without the unbearable rent. Welcome to a place where your dollar stretches further than your hope of seeing the sun in January. Buffalo is a city of extremes. Extreme weather, extreme pride, and extreme amounts of blue-collar grit. Let's start with the numbers, because stats are fun when you want to sound smart. Buffalo has one of the lowest costs of living in New York State. Housing is cheap, which means you can rent a decent apartment, pay for utilities, and still have money left for an endless supply of chicken wings. And yes, Buffalo-style wings are basically a currency here. Forget stocks, just invest in spicy wings and mild sarcasm. They're guaranteed to pay off socially. Neighborhoods in Buffalo are eclectic. Downtown has its charms, restored warehouses, coffee shops, a small but growing cultural scene. Then there's Allentown, the artsy enclave full of galleries, weird murals, and people who genuinely believe a beard and a craft cocktail are a lifestyle choice. And of course, the outskirts, where industrial history meets abandoned factories and overgrown lots. Perfect for Instagram photos if you like the post-apocalyptic aesthetic. Buffalo is basically one big aesthetic experiment, and the rent is cheap enough that you can participate without selling a kidney. Employment? Buffalo has some options if you're in healthcare, education, or manufacturing, but don't expect Silicon Valley salaries. On the bright side, your rent will feel like a raise every month. And let's be honest, with Buffalo winters lasting 6 months, you'll probably spend half your paycheck on heating anyway, so that cheap rent is mostly offset by the Furnace Survival Fund. Weather. Oh, Buffalo weather. If you move here, embrace the snow. Lake effect snow is a very real thing, and yes, it can dump a foot or more overnight. Your car may become a permanent ice sculpture, your driveway a battlefield, and your mood, well, let's just say you'll develop a healthy respect for snow shovels. But Buffalonians don't complain. They layer up, sip local beer, and go about their business, quietly proud that they can survive winter without moving south. Buffalo's charm is subtle but persistent. The city has history, stunning architecture, an underrated waterfront on Lake Erie, and sports teams that bring locals together in ways few things can. The Bills, especially, inspire almost religious devotion. Win or lose, the city will watch, cheer, and sometimes cry collectively. And the food? Oh, the food. Beyond wings, there's beef on weck, pierogies, and a surprisingly growing international cuisine scene. Cheap, hearty, and unapologetically Buffalo. And yet, Buffalo is not perfect. Some neighborhoods are struggling, public transport is limited, and parts of the city can feel, well, rough. Winters are brutal, summers are short, and if you're looking for glamour or glitz, keep scrolling. But here's the kicker. For those who can embrace the quirks, the extremes, and the occasional wall of snow, Buffalo rewards you. Affordable living, tight-knit communities, and a resilience that's both inspiring and mildly terrifying. So, Buffalo, New York. Low-cost living, loyal fans, legendary wings, and weather that doubles as a survival test. Come for the rent, stay for the culture, and maybe, just maybe, you'll fall in love with a city that proudly wears its flaws like a badge of honor. Buffalo is not perfect, but it's real, it's gritty, and it's waiting for you to brave the cold, preferably with a plate of wings in hand.
So, there you have it. 4 cities where your rent won't bankrupt you, the winters might, and the locals are a mix of heroes, legends, and people who'll quietly judge you for moving in. Pittsburgh, Detroit, Cleveland, and Buffalo. Cheap, weird, occasionally dangerous, but always unforgettable. Remember, cheap doesn't mean easy, but if you can handle a little grit, some snow, and the occasional existential crisis over your apartment's heating bill, congratulations, you found a place where your dollar actually matters. Now go forth, choose wisely, or randomly, and enjoy the adventure of living somewhere that's affordable, honest, and unapologetically itself. Because in these cities, you don't just live, you survive, you laugh, and you somehow make it work. And that, my friends, is priceless.